According to official police history, there are no women working for the police in Victorian Britain. No, definitely not. Move along now, ladies, nothing to see here. According to official history, the first women voluntary police patrols take place during the First World War, and these women are officially incorporated into the police around 1918. So the idea of a long-serving female police detective in Victorian Britain, well, that's pure fantasy. Or is it? It's the 30th of November 1855 and a woman is waiting in the first-class waiting room of a London railway station. But this woman isn't waiting for a train. She's been here since 10 o'clock and it's now almost 12, but the last time she waited for this man, she was there for 6 hours, from 10 until 4, waiting unobtrusively like a spider in front of the entrance, watching the passengers come and go, hearing the steam trains hiss as they arrive and clank as they exit. Suddenly, something catches her eye. It's a pair of shoes. Shoes that are slightly wrong for this first-class waiting room, a little bit too shabby. They belong to a man who sits down on the sofa opposite the fire. After a time, he reaches down below a table and picks up a portmanteau, a heavy travelling case, about 40 pounds, and then just puts it down again. He's a bit fidgety. He goes out on the platform, walks up and down a little bit, and then he comes in casually, picks up the portmanteau and walks out with it. This is the thief that Elizabeth Joyce has been waiting for. She gives the word and John Cotton Curtis is apprehended. He's a former city businessman turned baggage burglar, and Elizabeth has been after him for some time. On the 23rd of November, he stole a portmanteau belonging to a vicar, containing the vicar's underwear and a rather fancy pair of shoes from Medwin's in Regent Street. That day, he slipped away and Elizabeth lost him in the crowd. But today, he's not going to be so lucky. John Cotton Curtis, serial suitcase stealer, has run out of track. Now, this may seem like a relatively insignificant case. John Cotton Curtis got 12 months, end of story. But the trial, which took place here at the Old Bailey in December 1855, drew attention to a remarkable fact which was reported in numerous newspapers. The judge at the trial quite matter-of-factly said that Elizabeth Joyce was employed as a female detective. This was quite true, and it wasn't news to the judge, who had seen her in the Old Bailey before giving evidence, but it was news to the newspapers. Elizabeth Joyce, in fact, had been working at St Bride's Police Station at 119 Fleet Street for at least 9 years, since she was 29 in 1846. And she had lots of experience then of seeing and dealing with criminals. John Cotton Curtis himself noted that she was a special detector appointed for her acute knowledge of all these things. Elizabeth Joyce worked at the police station as a female detective searcher, and she wasn't the only woman. There were many women across London and other cities doing this important work. Because when a suspect came into a police station who was a woman, of course a man couldn't search her with propriety. And desperate Victorian thieves, like drug mules today, concealed stolen items everywhere on their bodies and in their clothes. So, for example, sometimes people hid golden sovereigns under their tongue or even swallowed them. Items like small pieces of jewellery could be sewn into the lining of a dress or the heel of a shoe. Detective searchers became very adept at knowing what to look for and where to look. In one famous example, there was a woman who had 40 pawn tickets, each one of them relating to a stolen item, concealed in her back hair. So Elizabeth Joyce was very experienced as a searcher at doing detective work. female detective searchers did other kinds of police work too. They could testify, for example, to bruises and other injuries that might be incurred by women in the case of domestic violence or homicide attempts. They took witness statements, and they were good at giving evidence in trials, such as this one at the Old Bailey, something that had to be clear and cogent and thorough. And Elizabeth Joyce was very good at it. She stood up to cross-examination. These were learned skills, and her evidence appears regularly in the Old Bailey record from 1846 through to 1855, including in a case of a young female pickpocket who was working the buses, using her large fashionable skirts as a kind of cover across other people's clothing so that her hands could nip underneath and feel for people's wallets and purses, and then off she got at the next stop. Just like John Cotton Curtis, leaving the railway station with his spoils in hand. Like many of the Metropolitan Police in the 1840s, Elizabeth Joyce was a first-generation Londoner who came from a working-class background. She was born Elizabeth Woolard in the rural Cambridgeshire village of Great Wilbraham, where her father was a thatcher. She came with her sister Orpha to London as young women looking for new opportunities. She would find both love and tragedy. Elizabeth Woolard met her husband James Joyce when they were both living in College Street in Chelsea. As young people, she at number 2 and he at number 18, and they married in 1843 when both were about 26. James was a shoemaker who'd become a policeman, cobbler turned peeler, if you like. And together they moved here to the City of London, to St Bride's police station, where they lived above the shop, which was actually very common in Victorian Britain. The Victorian police station was a whole community, and many police officers, particularly the young and single ones, would live in the station house, so they all knew one another. Elizabeth was working as a detective searcher. James was working as a policeman on the beat. But sadly, the marriage was doomed. After only 6 years, James died of typhus. His will names as his executrix, "My dear wife, Elizabeth." And one of the witnesses is his friend, colleague and fellow policeman, Walter Tyler. It's interesting that after her husband's death, Elizabeth doesn't move out of St Bride's police station. She continues and works there. In fact, her career with the police actually lasts longer than her first marriage. Eventually, in 1856, after some time has passed, she marries again at St Bride's Church, here in the heart of London, a stone's throw from the police station, to Walter Tyler, her first husband's bestie. Elizabeth Joy's career provides solid, consistent evidence of how women really were working for the police in Victorian Britain, not just on a casual basis, but having careers that in some cases lasted for over a decade. She wasn't alone. There was, for example, Sarah Dunaway, the scourge of sugar traffickers in London's East End docks, or Martha Diffie, a female detective searcher also in London, who in a sting operation helped to nail an illegal abortionist. Or take Anne Lovesey, perhaps most incredibly, she worked for Birmingham Police Force for over 25 years, both as a female detective searcher in the police station and outside on the city's streets detecting crime. These and other early female detectives show that despite vociferous denials, women were working for the police in Britain all along. Indeed, they're crucial to the fabric of Victorian policing. It's just that history tore down the curtain.